Level 1, the Cadet. You're 18. You didn't stumble into this. You applied twice before they said yes. The Air Force officer qualifying test, the medical screening, the psychological evaluation, the panel interview where 4 officers stare at you without blinking and ask what you do if you were ordered to fire on a position containing a confirmed target and possible civilians. You answered without flinching. That's why you're here. Undergraduate pilot training begins at Laughlin Air Force Base, Del Rio, Texas. The heat is relentless. The schedule is worse. You're up at 0430, ground school by 0600, aerodynamics, navigation, meteorology, emergency procedures. You memorize checklists the way other people memorize prayers because out there they serve the same purpose. Your first flight is in a T-6 Texan II, single-engine turboprop. The instructor says nothing encouraging. He watches your hands, watches your eyes, watches what you do when the horizon tilts 40 degrees and the ground starts filling your windscreen. You correct barely. He marks something down. There are 24 cadets in your class. By month 4, 6 have washed out. No dramatic exit. One morning, their room is cleaned out. Their name is off the board. Training continues. You stop making friends too quickly. Level 2, the student pilot. You're 20. You've moved to the T-38 Talon. Supersonic twin engine. No mercy. It doesn't fly. It negotiates. Every input is a conversation between you and physics. And physics doesn't compromise. Night formation flying begins. You hold position 30 feet off the lead aircraft's wing at 400 knots in total darkness, navigating by a single row of dim blue lights on the wingtip ahead of you. 1 degree of drift, and you're a debris field. Your instructor is a former A-10 pilot named Major Hicks. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He simply says again. Every time you drift, every time your scan breaks down, every time your brain tries to look at too many instruments at once, pilots who stare at one thing die looking at it. Scan. Always scan. You scan. You graduate in the top third of your class. Enough. Assignment night arrives. Everyone gathers in a room. Names are called. Aircraft types are assigned. F-16, C-17, KC-135. Then your name. 1 aircraft, 2 words, A-10 Thunderbolt. The room doesn't go quiet. Someone across the table nods slowly. The A-10 is not glamorous. It is not fast. It is not invisible. It is ugly, loud, and built for one purpose: to fly low, find soldiers who are about to die, and save them. You call your parents that night. You tell them you got a good assignment. You tell them everything else because none of it is classified. Level 3, the mission-ready pilot. You're 23. A-10 qualification takes 8 months at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. You learn the aircraft the way a surgeon learns a scalpel. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon, 30mm rounds, 3,900 per minute. The aircraft is literally built around the gun. The engine mounts sit off-center to accommodate the barrel. You learn the Maverick missile, the cluster munitions, the targeting pod that lets you see a license plate from 2 miles away. You learn to fly low. 100 feet, 50 feet, fast enough to be dangerous, slow enough to see exactly what you're shooting at. The A-10 can fly on 1 engine. It can fly with half a wing. It has been shot by surface to air missiles and returned to base. It is not a plane that dies easily. Your qualification mission requires you to fly a simulated close air support profile. Find a convoy under attack, identify the friendly position, confirm the target, fire, return. The full profile runs 4 hours. You complete it without a single deviation. Your evaluator signs your form and says, "Welcome to the Hogs." You understand what that means. You're a hog driver now. Level 4, the flight lead. You're 27. You lead your own section now. 2 aircraft, your responsibility. You fly your first real-world deployment to Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan. From there, the A-10 covers the valleys and mountains where American soldiers fight on foot against people who know the terrain better than anyone. The radio calls come in all hours. Troops in contact request immediate close air support. You roll in low. The rules of engagement are precise. Positive identification before firing, confirmation of friendly position, clearance from the ground controller, all of it happening in seconds while you're flying at 300 knots, 200 feet above a ridgeline. One morning, a call comes in. 12 soldiers pinned down, 3 enemy positions, 2 soldiers already hit. You and your wingman roll in. The GAU-8 fires for 2 seconds. The ridgeline goes quiet. The soldiers survive. You return to base. You refuel. You brief the debrief. You eat dinner. That night, a sergeant you've never met and will never meet writes in his journal that an angel with a gun saved his life today. He calls it by its sound. You never read the journal. You don't need to. You already know. Level 5, the instructor pilot. You're 31. You fly with students in the right seat now. New A-10 pilots who remind you of yourself 8 years ago. Precise, eager, still believing that skill is the primary variable. You know better now. You teach the aircraft, but more than that, you teach judgment. What do you do when the ground controller gives you a target that doesn't match what you're seeing through the targeting pod? What do you do when the friendly position marker is wrong and you figure it out 2 seconds before you fire? What do you do when the soldier on the radio is so scared he can't give you a coherent grid? One student, Lieutenant Castillo, is technically perfect, best gun scores in the class. But in the simulator, when the ground controller panics and starts giving contradictory instructions, Castillo freezes. 2 seconds, then 3. That's long enough for soldiers to die. You write it in his evaluation, not as a failure, as a pattern to fix. You run him through scenario after scenario until the chaos becomes signal, until signal becomes response, until response becomes instinct. 3 months later, he qualifies. He thanks you, you nod, you move to the next student. Level 6, the operations officer. You're 35. You no longer spend your days in the cockpit. You spend them in a building adjacent to the flight line, managing schedules, readiness rates, maintenance cycles, and mission briefs for the entire squadron. The squadron has 24 primary pilots. Each must maintain currency, minimum flight hours, weapons proficiency checks, close air support evaluations. Your job is to ensure all of it happens simultaneously without breaking the aircraft or the people. You attend daily briefings where the language starts to shift. You stop hearing sortie and start hearing posture, budget posture, force structure, retirement timeline. Because the A-10 is under threat, has been for years. The Air Force keeps trying to retire it. Congress keeps blocking them. The argument against the A-10 is cost. The argument for it is every soldier who came home because of that sound. You know which argument you believe. A readiness inspection arrives unannounced. Inspectors from Air Force Combat Command. 3 days. Every procedure, every checklist, every response time measured to the second. You pass. The inspector shakes your hand. He says your squadron is the best he's seen this year. You go back to your desk. You open the budget report. The retirement proposal is still there. You close it. You go back to work. Level 7, the squadron commander. You're 40. You command an A-10 squadron, approximately 350 personnel, pilots, weapons officers, maintenance crews, intelligence analysts, support staff, all of them reporting upward through a chain that ends ultimately at the Pentagon. You brief your pilots on something the manuals don't cover, why we're still here. The F-35 can do close air support, technically, but it flies too fast to see what's on the ground. It costs $100 million per aircraft. Every bullet it fires is a decision made from altitude by a computer. The A-10 flies at 100 feet. The pilot sees the soldiers. The pilot sees the enemy. The pilot makes the call. No algorithm does that. You fight for your aircraft in every meeting, every budget briefing, every force structure review. A young pilot, Lieutenant Santos, asks you after a briefing if you think the A-10 will survive. You tell him the truth. I don't know. He nods. He goes back to training. Level 8, the wing commander. You're 45. You command an A-10 wing. Your authority covers the aircraft, the personnel, the facilities, and the mission readiness of every pilot under your command. You travel now. Washington, Pentagon briefings, congressional hearings. You sit at tables where generals who have never flown close air support explain why the A-10 is obsolete. You listen. Then you talk. You don't raise your voice. You don't need to. You bring data, combat save rates, sortie completion rates, pilot accounts from soldiers on the ground. The A-10 has more confirmed saves of American lives than any other aircraft in the inventory. The room gets quiet in a particular way. The way it does when numbers say something the argument can't answer. The retirement proposal gets delayed. Not canceled, delayed. You'll take it. Level 9, the strategic commander. You're 51. You are now a general officer, 2 stars. You advise on close air support doctrine, force structure decisions, and the transition planning for whatever replaces the A-10 when it finally goes. You have seen the replacement proposals. You understand what they mean for the soldiers who will fight the next war. You sit in a briefing where a junior analyst presents a close air support gap analysis. His numbers are optimistic. His assumptions underestimate what the A-10 does that no other aircraft currently does. You correct him, specifically, with data from 3 decades of combat. Afterward, a colleague says to you that analyst will remember this briefing for the rest of his career. You think about Major Hicks, the T-38. The word again spoken without frustration. Just expectation. Good. You say he should. Level 10, the last flight. You're 54. Your final flight in the A-10 Warthog is a training profile. No combat, no troops in contact, just you and the aircraft. You don't announce it as your last flight. You brief it like any other. You fly it like any other. At 100 feet, somewhere over the Nevada desert, you level the aircraft and fly straight for 60 seconds. The ground moves underneath you fast and close. The way it always has. You think about Afghanistan, the 12 soldiers on the ridgeline, the 2 seconds of fire, the quiet that came after. You think about the pilots you trained, Castillo, Santos. Some of them command squadrons now. One of them will probably be in this cockpit when the retirement finally comes. If it comes. You think about the men and women who maintained this aircraft for 30 years, who kept it flying when the Pentagon wanted it gone, who believed in what it does because they understood who it does it for. The soldiers on the ground, the ones who hear the sound before they see the aircraft, the ones who know that sound means they're going to be okay. You begin the descent back to base. You grease the landing out of habit, out of pride. You taxi to the flight line, shut down the engines, complete the post-flight checklist for the last time. You sign the maintenance log. You hand your helmet bag to the crew chief. You walk across the ramp in the afternoon sun, and you don't look back. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you already know what's there. 30 years, 1 aircraft, 1 mission. Find soldiers who are about to die, save them. The sky always knew your name. The soldiers just called it by its sound.